Relations between Cameroon and the European Union remain strong and mutually beneficial. Outgoing European Union Ambassador His Excellency Hans-Peter Schadek advocates for better ties with Prime Minister Joseph John Gute. Government's response strategy against the coronavirus and the epidemiological surveillance mechanism is unveiled in Yaoundé as Public Health Minister underscores transparency in the management of the pandemic. Former Director of the Advanced School of Mass Communication, former Director of Information on CRTV, Professor Marc-Joseph Ongbar, remembered for his assiduity and humility, journeys to eternity and receive homage from the education community. Those were the headlines of the 7:30 News. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Each of us must comply with the measures that have been taken.
Ties between Cameroon and the European Union have been described as one based on respect and mutual understanding that have been beneficial to communities. The outgoing head of the European Union delegation in Cameroon, His Excellency Hans-Peter Schadek, made this statement during an audience granted him by Prime Minister Joseph John Gute. Star Building correspondent Christian Cheatam reports that the scope of cooperation was also reviewed.
This last audience, which Prime Minister Joseph John Gute has accorded the outgoing head of the European Union delegation to Cameroon, has been a forum to make one last panoramic review of the cooperation between Cameroon and the EU.
The European Union is the biggest trade partner of Cameroon. 48% of its exports go to Europe, and Europe is able to export almost a third of what is imported by Cameroon.
The trade relations between the two are also symbolized by the Economic Partnership Accords, which have been in execution since 2016.
I would say it is working normally. The guaranteed access of Cameroon exports for the EU market is guaranteed.
The final audience was also the stage to discuss other spheres of cooperation which link Cameroon and the EU.
And there are also questions of regional peace and stability.
As Prime Minister, Joseph John Gute says farewell to the outgoing head of the EU delegation. Both men are aware that it is not the end, but just the beginning of a new chapter in the long-standing relations between Cameroon and the European Union.
As you just watched, the European Union remains committed to accompany Cameroon in her development drive. The confirmation was made by the departing European Union ambassador to Cameroon, His Excellency Hans-Peter Schadek, at an audience with the Minister of the Economy, Planning and Regional Development, Alamin Osman May. Details with Charles Ebon.
European Union member countries' coronavirus financial assistance to Cameroon totals some 15 billion CFA francs, with about 8 billion directly coming from the European Union Commission. And that is a major feat for the departing European Union ambassador to Cameroon to comfortably meet the Minister of the Economy, Planning and Regional Development for a farewell audience.
A very marking moment that we were able to have the kick-off event of a bridge over the Logan River in Yagua, which has been which took place a couple of months ago, early this year.
3 years on, Hans-Peter Schadek has worked to maintain the European Union as one of Cameroon's key investment partners. Just a few days ago, a 10 billion CFA francs deal was sealed to power the cotton industry in the country.
Relationship and cooperation is very multiform and wide.
The Economy Minister, Alamin Osman May, and the European Union Ambassador to Cameroon also reviewed cooperation between Cameroon and the 27 member state association in other fields like the political structured dialogue between both sides.
As announced in one of our top stories, public health officials are determined to provide transparency in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. At a press conference today in Yaoundé, Minister Manauda Malashi presented government's epidemiological surveillance mechanism and response strategy against the virus. Beatrice Ngup was there and our reports.
The minister told pressmen and women what is done on the field to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. He said, from the obligatory wearing of face masks to the construction of isolation centers and the purchase of medical equipment, the records are on paper and clear for transparency purposes. For now, more than 20 billion CFA francs has gone into the management of the pandemic during the last 5 months, with a bulk of the funds used to rehabilitate health structures and the acquisition of beds and medical equipment. The minister also said that sensitization against the disease is collective with 3 objectives. First, to stop community contamination. Secondly, to reduce COVID mortality. And lastly, to mitigate the impact of the disease on the health system. He also applauded health staff at the forefront of the pandemic, risking their lives to roll back the disease. A rollback of COVID that has privileged the 3 C's option of tracking, testing, and treatment. Minister Manauda wrapped up his press conference with news on the multiplication of testing centers across the regions, while insisting that in the days ahead, COVID testing caravans will pitch their tents in markets.
Members of the PREP-CEMAC monitoring unit are assessing the implementation of the Commission's actions amidst the coronavirus pandemic. The Economic and Financial Reform Program, which focuses on budgetary policies, amongst others, was examined during a meeting chaired by Antoine Ngakenye via a video conference. Caroline Okia-Anoma has more.
Experts of the CEMAC's Economic and Financial Reforms Program, dubbed PREP-CEMAC of the sub-region, have met via video conference in preparation of the 11th ordinary session of the PREP-CEMAC Steering Committee scheduled for Friday, July 31, 2020.
The technical committee is in charge to prepare the deliberations, to prepare documents for the minister. We went point by point to study the pillars of the PREP-CEMAC.
Presiding over the monitoring committee, the chairperson made an evaluation of the impact of COVID-19 on the CEMAC sub-region.
Just like other regions in the world, the CEMAC sub-region has been hard hit by the economic and social consequences of the coronavirus. The post-COVID-19 revival plan gives pride of place to the welfare of the private sector and the provision of adequate infrastructure in member countries. The plan will run from 2021 to 2025.
The emergency measures taken by governments of member countries with the support of the sub-regional body and development partners have helped their economies to gain relative stability.
In continuation of our series on the functioning of the container yard of the Douala port, we zoom in on its IT system. It has been suffering from unreliable internet services and is now considering having an independent connection to its transactions. Clarissa Ray Takang looks at how engineers are lifting obstacles which include users' ignorance on the use of the computer system.
Out with the old and in with the new computer system in order to keep track of all activities at the container yard.
We put in place the container management system in the operational part. But after that, we put also in place the billing system. So for this moment, all the customers receive his bill automatically.
For a number of transporters, the initiative is good, but
In the beginning, it was without problems, but suddenly we noticed that things were blocked. The multimodal transport system wasn't taken into account, and this blocked the system even at the borders.
Ignorance about how to use the system to ease customs procedures is said to be the reason behind the concerns that have been raised.
When the system was launched, training had to follow. There is equally time to adapt. The new training will be more strategic. It will take into account the preoccupations of each actor.
6 months have gone by since IT connections were made to manage and secure data at the container yard of the Douala Autonomous Port. The performance of the system remains closely monitored.
In other news, the Association of Elders of Funde Division have paid a courtesy visit to the Minister of State Property, Surveys and Land Tenure. The elders expressed their satisfaction over the work done by Minister Henry Eyebe-Ayisi in the complex land tenure sector. During a meeting, the member of government pledged to work in collaboration with them and to promote good governance, to stamp out corruption and to digitalize the services offered. Over in the Adamawa region, the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, Issa Chirima Bakari, is on a 2-day working visit in the region to promote employment and to encourage quality education in schools. The minister's visit took him to the Vocational Training Center under construction in Gaundare, as we hear this report by Rikiatu Musa Jinge.
It's been a great desire for many youth in the Adamawa region to see to it that the employment rate increases. The visit of the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, Issa Chirima Bakari, comes as a relief, accompanied by the Adamawa Governor Kildaji Tayeke Bukar and other living forces of the region. Issa Chirima Bakari visited the Wheat and Corn Flour Food Processing Company, the Academic Training and Vocational Guidance Center in Gaundare, which has as role to support startups with economic growth, and a 3-hectare piece of land to build a multi-purpose vocational training center.
Vocational training is the backbone, is the milestone in the fight against the unemployment of youth. The vocational training purpose is to provide the necessary training that the labor market need desperately. So I strongly advocate and advise them when I grant the visa.
Most of the partners told the minister that they lack financial means and are in need of resources to carry out commitments to reduce unemployment to socially acceptable levels. The visit ended with a working session where Issa Chirima Bakari lauded different stakeholders for their efforts and urged them to remain steadfast as they carry on the training of youth, for there is no employment without training.
Back in the Centre region, the 2020 budget of the Yaoundé City Council has dropped by 5 billion CFA francs. The budget, which stood at 37 billion CFA francs, was slashed due to the ravaging coronavirus pandemic. Chaired by the city mayor, Luc Atangana Messi, the councillors reviewed the projects earmarked for execution and emphasized that priority will be given to programs that directly influence the development and well-being of the population. The construction of an annexed council building, as well as waste management and hygiene schemes, will be revised. The Northwest region is recording no cases of the coronavirus daily, and administrative officials are bent on reducing the number of infections. Governor Adolphe Lele-Lafrique has been to treatment centers, markets, streets and recreational grounds to ensure that inhabitants do not lower their guard on preventive measures. Mercy Kusi tells us more from Bamenda.
Governor Adolphe Lele-Lafrique has been combing through the bars, travel agencies, supermarkets and markets in Bamenda, making sure that everything is done right in line with the fight against COVID-19. He has been to all the quarters at the Bamenda Central Prison, sensitizing inmates about the disease and encourage those fabricating face masks at the correctional facility.
This is the opportunity of field visit today to revamp the activities of the task forces that have been set up to shun away the virus from our communication and transport domain. 3 of the
COVID-19 treatment centers in the city received the governor with the assurance that necessary equipment are available to handle the pandemic.
We call ourselves the frontline fighters, and that is what makes us vulnerable. But as health personnel, we have learned methods of infection control, just like soldiers go to war.
Governor Adolphe Lele-Lafrique has emphasized that those who go against the COVID-19 rules will be severely punished.
The wearing of face masks in public places will be mandatory until further notice.
Welcome back. Cameroon is set to celebrate the African Day of Seas and Oceans, one of the recommendations of the 2050 Africa's Integrated Maritime Strategy. In prelude to the celebration due tomorrow, July 25, the Ministry of the Environment, Nature Protection and Sustainable Development has organized a video conference to seek solutions to ocean pollution in Cameroon. Alice Mbaye has the details.
There are officials from the Ministry of Environment attending a video conference with the Director Generals of the Douala and Kribi seaports. This is in commemoration of the International and African Ocean Pollution Day, holding under the theme Innovation for a Sustainable Ocean.
The choice of the theme will promote and improve the marine scientific research to meet up our needs.
Experts say about 20% of the ocean in Cameroon has been polluted, affecting the society negatively.
We have close to trillions of particles of plastic in our oceans. And at the level of Cameroon, about 10,000 metric tons of plastic in the ocean.
The Ministry of Environment is out to seek solutions on how to stop ocean pollution and improve on the quality of seawater.
There are many activities carried out to protect trees in order to curb erosion.
The project to solve ocean pollution in Cameroon has been under gestation since 2015 and is expected to go operational by 2021.
Members of the Parliamentary Network for the Promotion of Entrepreneurship say it is imperative for government to reinforce mechanisms that encourage creativity and innovation in business ventures. This was at separate exchanges with the Minister of Finance and of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, Social Economy and Handicraft. Details in this report. The need to spur the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Cameroon is rife, and members of parliament suggest that monitoring, training and financing are primordial. With officials of the Ministry of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, they expounded on the major setbacks of growth in this sector.
Most important is to have first the willing to do business. After that, you have to be educated, to have to know how to deal with a company, because to run a company is not an easy thing.
With actions already in course, such as the National Pilot Business Incubator, to encourage local entrepreneurship, the executive will strengthen cooperation with the legislators.
There is a great convergence of views, and we believe that there is possibility to build bridges to ensure that we continue providing our ecosystem with the necessary policy tools that will enable the Parliament to play a very important role as an interface of the government.
Given that adequate financial planning guarantees the survival of ventures, the lawmakers meeting with Finance Minister Louis-Paul Motaze emphasized on capital investments and the maintenance of good working capital flow to keep operations going. It's almost 7:50 p.m. and researchers say there is no official confirmation yet that traditional medicine is part of the treatment protocol for COVID-19. In a recent outing, the Institute of Medical Research and Medicinal Plant Studies said COVID-19 patients should rely on the treatment protocol prescribed by government. Our reporter Baldwin Sama and his guest, Dr. Protus Takang, who is a senior researcher, says that it is important to work in collaboration with traditional medicines. Hello, Baldwin.
Good evening to you, Esther Kima. During their daily press briefing here at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center, public health experts have used the opportunity to simply outline the different measures that have been taken so far by the government of Cameroon to limit the spread of COVID-19 ever since we had the first case for COVID-19 tested in the country. And they have equally talked about the non-respect by some residents of the nation's economic capital, Douala and Yaoundé, of some of these measures that led to a considerable rise in the number of persons tested for COVID-19 in the littoral and the central regions of the country. And what Cameroonians need to know is that so far we have had 145,000 tests for COVID-19 carried out in Cameroon, and 30 Cameroonians are on oxygen trying to battle between life and death, those suffering from COVID-19. Tonight with our guest, we shall be looking at the possibility whether or not traditional medicine can be included in the treatment protocol for COVID-19 in Cameroon. He is Dr. Protus Takang, Itakang. He is a senior research fellow at the Institute for Medical Research and Medicinal Plant Studies in the Ministry of Scientific Research and Innovation. Good evening, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you, Baldwin.
Yes, tell us, Doctor, what's the role of traditional medicine in the treatment protocol for COVID-19 in the country?
Yeah, thank you. First, as a reminder, let's just talk about COVID-19 itself. It's a respiratory tract infection that has many other consequences because it affects the respiratory lungs, blood vessels, and this can result in oxidative stress of physiological processes in the digestive tract. And it causes other complications, which depends on the individual. So now some of the symptoms are already known. Now, in our Cameroon pharmacopoeia, we have plants that are either antiviral or that target some of these symptoms. So traditional practitioners have one of their targets. Either you are taking the plants that target this virus because it is already identified, or it targets some of the symptoms. Well, it's true that they might not know strategically which one works, so they always have a concoction of many plants because this disease, just like many other diseases, is multifactorial. The plants now target those various symptoms or the pathogen in question.
Tell us, Doctor, can it be proven so far that traditional medicine has been able to permit some persons tested positive for COVID-19 recover?
I think you know as well as I do, and many people know that the traditional medicine, which are complementary medicine, which is now called integrative medicine, has yielded many fruits. Some of the best treatments, like in malaria, have come from plants. So some of these antivirals, they are there in nature and they have been treating patients. It's true we do not have a record of all what has been done. That's why in our institute, the Institute of Medical Research and Medicinal Plant Studies, which has a Center for Medicinal Plants and Traditional Medicine, we are accompanying or assisting these traditional practitioners. I think you people reported last week, we had an interministerial meeting which was focusing on traditional practitioners and the Cameroon pharmacopoeia. So this is a strategy which can enable all of us to now document the proof and see this rate of success.
Thank you so much, Dr. Awipotu Stakang, for being available as a guest this evening. Cameroonians are called upon to simply respect government outlined measures against the spread of COVID-19 and make use of the treatment protocol made available by the government of Cameroon. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you very much, Baldwin, for insight into the virtues of traditional medicine and a blend of conventional medicine to fight the coronavirus in Cameroon. Over in the far north region, over 150 Boko Haram ex-fighters are acquiring skills in farming, livestock breeding and tailoring at the Disarmament Demobilization Center in Meri. Governor Mijiawa Bakari was at the unit to assess the level of insertion of the former combatants who have opted for peace. Henry Tato Ekambi has the details.
A few years back, some ex-Boko Haram associates voluntarily laid down their weapons after turning their backs on the barbaric sect. Today, they are now trying to live normal lives again at the Committee on Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration's Transit Center in Meri, far north Cameroon. The chief executive officer of the region, Mijiawa Bakari, paid a visit to this center and saw for himself how well the 155 ex-fighters are adapting as well as their challenges.
Ex-Boko Haram who are here, the SDO also, we've delegate of Minader and Minepia how to accompany those ex-Boko Haram. And the chief of Godola, Grant Hector, at their disposal.
He also enjoined the traditional authorities to help these former Boko Haram associates to carry out activities like farming, rearing, tailoring, amongst others. Governor Mijiawa Bakari also checked on students sitting the baccalaureate examination and the effectiveness of the Keep Meri Clean campaign.
On to one of our top stories, and on a sad note, the communication and media family mourns one of its finest actors, Professor Mark Joseph Ungba. The former director of the Advanced School of Mass Communication and one-time director of information of CRTV was coffined today in Yaoundé. The Minister of State, Minister of Higher Education, CRTV's Director General, university dons and sympathizers paid him their last respects. Ebenezer Akanga reports on the ceremony.
The last journey of the late Professor Marc Joseph Ngwa to his final resting place began in the mortuary of the Yaoundé Central Hospital, where his remains were coffined. The coffining ceremony was sober, just like the lifestyle that he lived. A brief service was said in the mortuary chapel of the hospital. From the mortuary, the remains of the late Professor Marc Joseph Ngwa were carried to the Paroisse Bienheureuse Annualité in Biemasi, where a requiem service was said for the repose of his soul. His remains will be buried this Saturday in his native village, Zouassal, in Bankomo subdivision of the Central region. Professor Marc Joseph Ngwa died on the 23rd of June 2020 in Yaoundé at 72. He occupied several positions during active service, notably Editor-in-Chief in Cameroon Tribune, Director of Information in CRTV, Director of ASMAC, Technical Advisor in the University of Yaoundé II, and Mayor of Bankomo.
On another sad note, the 41-year-old CPD member of the National Assembly, Honorable Aruna Abdoulaye Bougué, who died in a ghastly car crash on Wednesday, has been buried in his native Golombe near Guider in the North region. His burial was attended by the governor of the region, who extended his sympathy of the presidential couple to the deceased family. Wilson Mengole tells us more.
At the courtyard of the palace of His Majesty Abdoulaye Bougué, former member of parliament and father of the deceased MP, Honorable Haruna Bougué, imam, notables, family members and well-wishers recited verses of the Quran to Allah for the repose of the soul of the late member of the Glass House, who died after a ghastly motor accident this Wednesday on the Ngaoundéré-Garoua Highway. He left Yaoundé after the second ordinary parliamentary session. Testimonies all attest that the late Honorable Haruna Bougué was a near-perfect politician. It's a shocking situation, which is more than us. As a brother, he had a lot of respect for me. Vice versa. The former divisional delegate of Youth Affairs, Mayoluti Division, shot his way to Parliament in the last February twin elections. The body of the Prince of Golombe was laid to rest in Golombe in strict Muslim tradition.
And may the souls of the departed rest in peace. In religion, it is the last stretch to the Feast of the Ram, and Muslims have been steadfast in prayers. A couple of them expressed frustrations with being unable to do the pilgrimage to Mecca as a result of the COVID-19 restrictions. But overall, they attest been engaged in making the last 10 days to Tabaski a holy experience. Romeo Kenyi has been keen on how the holy journey is unfolding for them. Here's his report.
Sheep for sale. Heading to the market, we are in Zul Hijjah, meaning the month of pilgrimage. According to the Islamic calendar, approximately 10 days are left to the Feast of the Ram, and Muslim clerics advise faithful to worship the Almighty Allah with sincerity.
Pilgrims are going to assemble themselves on Mount Arafat, praying together, the whole world, praying in one place, in one language. From dawn till sunset.
Many pilgrims could not travel to Mecca this year because of the current global health crisis, but this doesn't stop committed worshippers from celebrating Tabaski.
The celebration of a feast is going to be according to law, according to the barrier of COVID-19.
Those who will not be able to make it to the mosque on the day are enjoined to pray back at home.
And that is how we saw it on this edition of the 7:30 News. But before we go, a recap of our major stories. Relations between Cameroon and the European Union remain strong and mutually beneficial. Outgoing European Union Ambassador, His Excellency Hans-Peter Schadek, advocates for better ties during an audience with Prime Minister Joseph John Gute. Government's response strategy against the coronavirus and the epidemiological surveillance mechanism has been unveiled in Yaoundé as Public Health Minister Manawuda Malashi has underscored transparency in the management of the pandemic. And finally, the former director of the Advanced School of Mass Communication and former director of Information on CRTV, Professor Marc Joseph Ngwa, Remembered for his assiduity and his humility has journeyed to eternity, he received homage from the education community and from colleagues. Today, more news comes up at 8:30 p.m. with Atabari Omar. I'll be back tomorrow, God willing. Good night and stay tuned to the programs of the CRTV. Stay protected. The coronavirus is real.
We should avoid stigmatizing.
Le weather forecast with C3 Production.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and hope you had a beautiful day. And thank you for making our time to join me again on the weather forecast. Tonight, we expect a calm weather to dominate the nation with a possibility of light, isolated showers in some parts of the far north, and the east regions. A minimum temperature of 15 degrees is expected in the northwest, the west and Adamawa regions as low as 17 degrees, and the center and east as low as 20, with the north and far north expecting a minimum temperature of 23 degrees. Detailing the Adamawa region, there may be heavy rainfall in Tibati, Tiknye, and Gaundere tonight, and by morning, heavy rainfall is expected to dominate the entire Adamawa region. Next, we go on to the littoral, where there may be heavy rainfall in Douala, Edea, and Yabasi tonight, and a similar experience by morning in the town of Kongsamba with a clouded sky in the entire region. Next, we go over to the southwest, where there may be heavy rainfall dominating the entire region tonight, and a similar experience by morning with a fully clouded sky. To protect yourself and others against the coronavirus, avoid hugging, stay away from congested areas, and in case of symptoms, call 1510. Have a good night.